and let it accrue, either to that to which the shaman is assigned, or to that to which the shaman has decided this is what moves me and this is what I want to constructively help. This is the only hope. This is the only excuse for any amount of optimism that we may feel, or any chance that we may feel about the future. If we list everything else, anything we know about economics or the corporate world or industry, or how finances are, we can rev it up again, or how we can, get more resources. You may have seen that ad, but Remington, whoever put that out, about how we're getting better and better at bringing forth this planet's resources and getting the planet to yield. You saw this picture of the Earth cut in half an Earth like an orange impaled upon this huge squeezer. That was their ad, and it said we can always squeeze a little harder. We can get more oil, we can get more energy to meet the ever-growing needs of our people to burn fuel and to have the high standards of living that we have. Which now, I say, how high is it? But if you take all the technology that we have, all the science that we know, all the machinery that we've developed, all the economic insights that experience has taught us, you take all these things and make a list of all these resources, I don't think there's a glimmer of hope without shamanism, without the capacity for us to draw upon that part of us which sits just beyond the brain self, just beyond this level of consciousness, with the intent to have it accrue to the general benefit. So the components are these. First is the intent. Then is the ordeal or the crisis that you face, that you come up to, the situation. And then is the accruement. Those three ingredients make the shaman. So first there's an intent. That's the first step. So the wrong order in becoming a shaman would be, you go to the class, you buy this, and you think, wouldn't it be neat if I'd be a shaman? This ad really attracted me. This is available now. I learned about this teacher. So-and-so's a good, they have the drumming, they have this, the that. That's the wrong order. As a first step, that's not included. But the right order is first your move. First, something that hits you right in the face. I don't care whether it's the rainforest or the environment or the animals or vivisection or the hole in the ozone layer or the way the healthcare is going, whatever it is that moves you. Once you're moved, once that adrenaline begins to flow, that's the first step. Without that, all the other steps are inappropriate and are just only a matter of self-indulgence. Wouldn't I be groovy if I would be a healer? I mean, we all have that. We can say it lovingly, but about ourselves. But the point is that the first step is to know that to which your power will accrue, which will be benefited by your power. The rest then almost takes care of itself. Except that in our culture, the hard part is to be available. The hard part is to be available. The crisis is all we need for the empowerment. We've got that. And the awareness, we don't get into the for us to be shamans, to make it inevitable that we'll be as powerful as we need to be, that we'll have undreamed of resources, undreamed of things we can't even guess at now that can be applied that will make a difference in a big way. Total big change. If we don't turn away, if we don't cocoon, if we don't ostrich, if we don't hide, if we don't cop out, if we don't fill our lives with so much personal agenda that we're not available to the situation. And we're almost forced to do that. So the mantra is, you know, the idea is RNPPA, RNPPA. Reduce non-preparatory personal agenda. Reduce non-preparatory personal agenda. Reduce non-preparatory personal agenda. So you take your training, so you do your study. Some people are in med school. That takes up their whole life. They're going to be a doctor. They know what they're going to do. They know what moves them. They know where they're going to apply it. So it's preparatory. A lot of what we do is preparatory. A lot of the training, a lot of the meetings, a lot of the is preparatory. But a lot isn't. The first time I heard that years ago, somebody said, busy, busy. I hate that word busy. People say busy. That's the most disgusting one. Why would people be more busy than they have been in the past? Years ago, people were saying, not the 60s, but the 50s. They were predicting, they were prophesying, they were saying, the time will come. It's the beautiful, it's the meant to be, it's part of the plan of some of this technology, some of this modernity. The time will come to allow people to be more available to the mutual work, to the group endeavor, to the planetary cause. People will be freed. They'll have time. They won't be busy. Their lives won't be, you see, constantly filled with just having to eat and survive. It won't take hours and hours to prepare a meal after days and days of gathering the substance. It won't take all day and night and all waking hours just to make a living. Not us who are sitting in this room, but beyond this room, a bigger us. We made it this way. We filled our lives with, I got to paint the kitchen, I got to sort out this, I got to clean the attic, I'm picking up so-and-so's coming into town, I have a chance to learn French, I'm taking up guitar, I'm going to take a trip to Boopy-Doop, I can work for this, for that, I work part-time to make ends meet, I got et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We do it on purpose. It is an escape. It is unnecessary. It is because we're scared to be online for some reason. It's too hard to let go of it all and say, I'm available. I heard some people in an airport one time who were coming back from some meeting about something, and they had a chance to go to this place, this country, I can't remember where it was, and work with some of the situation that existed in there with malnutrition and so forth. And one of them said, I could never get off work for that many days. And I thought, what a sorry situation it is, you see, that people have to worry about getting off work. I don't know how we're going to change it, but we're going to. It's unreasonable. And now what's making it happen, and it's another crisis/opportunity, we'll never have jobs again like we had before. We're not ever going to get back to the situation where we have enough jobs to go around. So jobs is not the answer. It's the immediate crisis intervention. I agree. Sometimes we need patch-up. I wouldn't mind seeing the government do something like in the Roosevelt days just to help the immediate crisis. Make some kind of, get people back into the job scene. But as soon as we can, we've got to get out of the idea, we need more jobs, we need more jobs. It's jobs people need, it's jobs people need. It's not true. It's time people need. The majority of the population has to have the majority of their time available to general causes beyond their personal cause. To making new villages, to making new cultures, to making new planetary circumstances. Somehow or other, at least we can name the goal. And I don't know either exactly how we're going to go about it, except I know it's possible.
Guaranteed subsistence level income for everybody.
Yeah, but from
and the people
from
who
where?
don't care about having a lot of luxuries that have enough to eat and pay the rent, and then we have all their time to do the work, the real work.
One idea that some people come up with is you get, like we find in many cultures, like even when I was living in Korea, it's all changing now. But you see, one or two people working in a household could support, and the household was more like a community. Either an extended family or a bunch of people or in-laws could support a number of people. Not everybody worked. That was partly because there weren't enough jobs to go around. One idea somebody has is, well, let's all reduce the time that we work so that everybody's working half time and make more time available. Some people's very jobs are their availability. Some people's very work is their availability. One thing to do is think about, what am I doing? And what does what I'm doing, I mean, we all have to make a living. That's preparatory too. See, you can say, well, reduce non-preparatory personal agenda, but you know, one of the ways to prepare is to stay alive or to make sure that you can live. You can take care of yourself. So, you know, we have to work with the circumstances that exist. But here's the idea. Availability is the most powerful word of our time, and the most powerful word for any individual or any group of people. If you can say, I'm available, if you can be available, if you can step out under the sky and look up and say, I am available, you will be sought. You don't need to seek any farther. That's the max in seeking. I'm available, I'm online. What would you have me do? Here I am. I have a mind, I have a heart, I have a will travel. The second is mobility. Much more increase in mobility. People ask, some of us were in a seminar one time, we had Mad Bear, Jack Schwartz, and I were doing this joint thing way out in the prairie somewhere. And I don't know, somehow we got talking about issues, we got talking about they're tearing down the forest and they're doing this and that. You know, when the Indians are around, you always get into it. And somebody asked, you know, well, when we had a panel, and somebody says, well, what can we do? Those of us in our society, you know, what can we do? What can we do to even be more aware? What can we do to be more online? And for some reason, out of my mouth came, you know, sell your car and go to take a trip to a foreign country. And that to a lot of people seems scary. Sometimes I get a little scared myself because, you know, a lot of times I tell people, you know, quit your job and sell your car and go overseas. It's cheap to live in another country. What's holding you back? You know, well, you're holding yourself back. There's so many adventures you might be able to do that you're holding yourself back. By now, I've talked to hundreds of people privately about their lives because of the fact that I'm doing all these you know, workshops in different places here and there. And it started because people want to have, you know, some chance to talk or some private time. And so I started making this time aside. And, you know, I don't charge very much compared to if I was a professional, but I charge, and people pay for this. And it's interesting, and it's, you know, dozens and now hundreds of times, all across from coast to coast, personal consultations with people. And what are we going to talk about? I mean, anybody who knows me knows I don't know anything myself. You know, all I've done is gone around and heard all this stuff from a bunch of other people, and I'm just repeating it. And but one thing I've gotten pretty good at is both hearing and speaking. I've got good ears, good mouth, and I use these really very well. But what's somebody going to do in a private time talking to me? Because I'm not going to do diagnosis. I'm not going to do medical treatments. I'm not going to do healings. I'm not going to do anything. So all we're going to do is talk. So it's been very interesting because it goes on, and now there have been hundreds of people. But it's certainly been a learning experience for me, at least those who've come to talk with me. Most people feel trapped. Most people feel trapped, and they feel trapped by their circumstances of their daily lives. They're serving their circumstances rather than the other way around. And with some people, I mean, it's really horrible. They'd give anything to be able to let go and get it. In the workshop that we're doing this next weekend, we'll review we're going to review the whole thing. It's like this talk, except it's the nitty-gritty. I mean, it's the practice, it's the techniques. And so I've developed these techniques or these ideas that I share to people that get them started, get them going. And so now I can safely say, you know, hundreds of people I've talked of these dozens of people as a result of, if it hadn't been me, of course, it'd be somebody else, because that's what happens, you know. But literally dozens of people have made major life changes. Major life changes. And so I know it's possible. And some of the techniques that we use, we'll talk about in the weekend workshop. And that weekend workshop, by the way, somebody dropped out. I think we just have one or two more spaces, and I don't know how many here are planning to do that. But that's going to happen again in May. And we'll get into some discussion in a minute. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But one of the ways of getting into this is to realize it's just so powerful, it's so beautiful, because it allows you, it gives you such leave, is to realize how soon you're going to be dead. It's really true. Of course, as you know, with the shamans and the people, they teach this overcoming the fear of death, and in Don Juan and all that, see the death over your shoulder. Life is short, and we're all eternal too. One of the things of being able to look at death honestly enough and clearly enough is you begin to really be able to get a little bit of a glimpse beyond it. We've heard now there's all this, near-death experiences of people that sort of across cultures and across time report beyond this. But it's mostly the fear of death that keeps us from getting some view that realizes really we're invulnerable. But this vehicle, this particular configuration, this body, this instrument that came here for time is so short, it really doesn't matter if you do something outrageous and extreme. Your excuse is you'll soon be dead. So that's one, that's one of the techniques. But if you can say I'm available, and if you can arrange, with a lot of us, therefore, to be able to say I'm available takes a rearranging of circumstances and a rearranging of priorities. But if you can do that and be available and know in advance that to which you hope to have your power accrue and benefit, the rest becomes, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy and that there's not a process. It becomes inevitable. It becomes a certainty. Until then, it's not a certainty. That's why a lot of people get, frustrated with all the different isms, and they do this and they try that and they get into this and they get into that. Then, but another thing is the collective. Another thing is the configuration. Another thing is breaking through that isolation. That's part of the cocooning. We're so separate. Well, we were talking even on the way down here about how in the neighborhoods, the people don't even know their neighbors. We don't have villages. We don't have a culture. We don't have a society. So we have to create those structures. But how we're going to get so that we can work in a group situation together anymore. A couple of us were talking yesterday about people go out, what makes us build up a lot of stress and hold it is we walk around among strangers. Even in a lot of places, a bit of fear. You never know what anybody's going to do. We're going from our personal private places to our personal private places, moving through a medium of a sort of a distasteful kind of something called the general public. That's this neutral, almost threatening thing toward which it's hard to feel any general warmth. And when people go out in their busyness and they move among all the rest of the people and get in their car and out, or try to find a parking place, or try to get in through the door, up the escalator, or down, or through the subway, or whatever, mostly people are going out to get their needs and their desires, their foodstuffs, but their hand lotion and their cosmetics and their LPs or their compact discs or whatever it is people like to shop for these days. It's almost weird if you say, I just love people so much that the reason I go out here and there is just to make contact with people. It's weird. You go to get your merchandise. You don't go for the people. But in these days, you see, this thing of saying, just do what you can inside yourself, be the best you can be. It's a step. Find a peace in your heart, yeah. But a lot of people, that's too separatist sounding. We like to say the thing, anticipate being in the orchestra and tune the instrument. Tune the instrument to something around you. Because of the fact that if you get toward the step of, and a lot of people just do this because they're aware enough and they're thinking enough and they're caring enough. If you get to the point where you can see what's happening with nature, or what's happening with this nuclear thing, what's happening with the rivers, what's happening with the air, what's happening in politics, what's happening with the economy, what's happening with waste, what's happening with, and you're with yourself and you don't get hooked up and you don't get involved in group endeavor and you don't get to talk about it in a group situation, it'll destroy you. It'll tear you to shreds. To be aware and not be in a group situation where you can talk about this and have support and share with each other, because it'll go round and round and round and round inside of your own being. And it feels terrible. I wanted to do one thing with us, or two, here real quick. Somebody suggested, even though this is not the workshop and it's just an evening, let's do a little exercise. And it's connected with all this. Some of you are familiar who've worked with me, and I won't even take a lot of time saying how it's connected, but we've talked about imaging and visualization. And one of the things that we work with in sort of the developmental way is what we call strengthening the image-making capability, or strengthening the ability to visualize. And somebody said, well, some people who haven't done the workshops or haven't done the work, let's just give a little exercise or a little, fun thing that we can do and that we can work on. Because what I like to do is, there are various things and various approaches, and a lot of stuff that's around today is a kind of like a for-the-moment sort of thing. You have a wonderful experience, but then when it's over, there's not that much you can do with it. And others are very different, but you have to keep coming back. And one of the things I enjoy doing, partly because I bop around a lot, is just leaving us with a lot of stuff that if we do it and follow up on it, it takes a few minutes to get how to do it. And then over the months ahead, if you keep it on, going with it on your own, it becomes very potent. It becomes very potent. In the workshop, we'll do a lot of those exercises. But, and by the way, real quick, I'll just announce that the workshop, which is tomorrow in San Francisco, which is called The New Shamanic Path from Activist to Adept. I'll do the same thing again in May. What is the second weekend in May? The 9th and the 10th?
Yes.
The 9th and the 10th. So we'll have the same agenda Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if anybody wants to deal with that. Or if anybody wants to ask me more about it, talk to me more about it. But here's what I want to do, and we can have a little bit of discussion while I do this. If somebody will volunteer to, some of you'll be familiar with this. It's just a kind of a fun game. I don't have enough here maybe for everybody, or maybe I do. If somebody here would just give everybody one of these, or if there's not enough, just kind of spread them around. And if you, we'll see what happens. If you're particularly sure you want one, raise your hand. If you'd rather not be included, raise your foot. And all you have to do, listen to this for a moment before I go on so that you'll get, all you have to do, yours is smaller than this, on the blank side of the index card, without the line, just write one word. And I even have some pencils here in case anybody needs one. Just come up and get it. Just write one word, but listen before you write it. The word has to be something you can draw. You don't draw it, you write it. But you know how a noun is a person, place, or thing? Well, what you do is just the thing. Don't do a person, don't do a place, don't do an idea, don't do an... Just a thing. Something you can see, like a chair or a guitar, or it could be small or insignificant like a paper clip, or it could be big like a moon or a sun. But just right in the middle of your piece of the blank side, write the name of a thing. And then we'll collect those in a moment. While you're writing, if you can just listen at the same time. One other interesting idea that I want to throw out in terms of availability and mutual work and all that is, and I don't know how significant this will be to you or what it means. I've thought about it in a lot of different ways, but I mentioned this little thing to a therapist one time, and he couldn't think about anything else for a few weeks after that. And it didn't hit me that way, but this little idea came up in a discussion I was having with a very well-known psychic. I won't mention his name. If I did, you might know him. It's not Uri Geller, it's the other one, who is supposed to be the most highly researched so-called psychic that we know. Except he wasn't quite a showman like Uri Geller, and so he even did some work for the government. He's the one that coined the phrase remote viewing. How many of you have heard of remote viewing? This guy was an adept at remote viewing. I mean, he since he got well known for that and was researched in some of the work that, in fact, I was a little bit involved in and had something to do, he found out he could do a lot more than remote viewing. He could see all the meridians and the points and the etheric body and all this. But what he told me is that up till that time, everything that he saw was concrete. That is, it was real. It was anything anybody else could see if they were there. The only difference was he didn't need to be there. He could be miles and miles away. And he could tell who was where and who was in the building and what was in the safe and what was, et cetera, et cetera. It was real stuff, but he could just view it remotely, so to speak. And he didn't happen to like the terms clairvoyance and clairaudience and all that, but he liked remote viewing. It sounded more real and not so sort of flaky. He also was very well known for his ability to make predictions, but he didn't like to do it. It's another kind of remote viewing, by the way. You see, when you look into the future, and we've talked about that in the course, in the powers, it's not really the future. You just look from a different vantage point in which you see it on its way. It's like we say, the bus that passes in front of your window. If you see it, if you can see enough of the street that you see the bus coming, to you it's not the future. If you're committed to, if your window is very narrow and you can't see the bus till it passes in front of your window, you see, then that's the present moment. But if somebody can see way down two blocks down the street and they see the bus coming, you see, that's what predicting. They just know it because they see it happening. It's the present moment to them. Nobody sees anything other than the present moment. So the way that you read the future, quote unquote, is to expand your view of the present moment. In a word, that's how it's done. But anyway, this particular friend was in Germany at a conference, at a psychic fair kind of, or some kind of thing, and he gave some little talk, and everybody was there. Mostly he was just invited to attend. And there were a lot of people that thought he was going to make a big prediction. And he said, no, I'm not going to make a big prediction. And they said, well, people will be disappointed. You really should say something, even if some small thing. And he said, no, because then they'll test it and they'll see if I'm right or wrong or whatever. I don't want to get into it. Well, they put him on the spot. The next day in the closing, somebody announced, we have talked so-and-so into giving us at least one prophecy, one prediction for the future. And he was already up on stage. All the presenters, you see, were already sitting up there, and it was the closing. And in his mind built up this big resistance and anger. I said I wasn't going to do that. I don't have any prediction. But out of his mouth came, and he was in question, out of his mouth came, the Berlin Wall will come down in precisely 18 months. The reaction was amazing. Group who was there, these were all German people, but the Berlin Wall came down 18 months later. Nobody had an inkling as far as anybody knew before that. So now he too has become a little bit more interested in just what this is and what goes on, so he's sort of started a group of people in New York to explore this process and sort of and how it works. But anyway, what I was going to tell you about this guy is that I had several conversations with him, and he's involved in a project I'm working on, and so we were talking, and then we went out to lunch one time. And we're sitting at lunch, and I can't remember what I said that made him say this. It was something about the future, and it was something about, what are we going to do? And maybe about hope or whatever. And I don't even know if I put a question to him, but I remember he said to me, well, he said, I can respond, but he said, you may not like my response. Well, I've heard that before from a lot of people I've been around, and I have my answer ready. It doesn't make any difference to me whether I like it or not. That's not why I'm listening to you to decide what I like. What you say is what you say, Whether I like it or not, or agree or not, that's not even any of my business, much less anybody else's. That's not the point. I'm interested, I said, in whatever it is. I'd like to hear what you have to say. And he said, I'm not really particularly attracted to the infirm. He said, it's not that I don't have a caring heart, and it's not that I don't understand about healing and want to learn more about it. But he said, the biggest tragedy of our time, and the most frightening thing to me, and the most ominous, and the most To me, if I were going to predict failure, it'd be based on this. Our best minds, our greatest healers, our most compassionate individuals, the only ones I know who now have the wherewithal to heal the planet, are caught up, obsessed with one-on-one therapy, obsessed with sickness, obsessed with pathology, obsessed with disease, and they're doing therapy, and they're doing this case, and this case, and this case, individual after individual, patient load, and it never stops coming, and it never stops coming, one-on-one, one-on-one, one-on-one. He said the people whose job it is and whose capacity it is to heal the planet, to make a real big change, are trapped in their obsession with infirm individuals. And that, to me, is the biggest danger we have on our planet. Well, I thought about that in a lot of ways. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can think about it. I mean, in some ways I see his point. But it's also, too, particularly now with the concepts of